Some disappearances start with chaos. This one started with nothing at all. No broken glass, no loud argument, no sign of a struggle. On a quiet weeknight in the town of Willow Creek, a nurse named Emily Hart finished her shift, drove home, and then, as far as anyone could tell, simply ceased to exist. Emily was 32, the kind of nurse patients remembered by name. She covered extra shifts, brought homemade food for coworkers, and rarely talked about herself. So when she failed to show up for work the next morning, people noticed immediately. Her car was neatly parked in its usual spot outside her apartment. Her handbag sat on the passenger seat. Her front door was locked from the outside. Inside, nothing was overturned. Her phone was gone. By the end of that day, Willow Creek's "nothing ever happens here" reputation was gone too. For investigators, the question was simple and terrifying. How does someone vanish when every detail looks normal? The early hours followed a familiar script. Maybe she stayed with a friend. Maybe she needed space. But as time passed, that optimism started to feel like denial. Her family said Emily never disappeared without warning. Her supervisor confirmed she'd left the hospital at 10:12 p.m. Tired but calm, a neighbor remembered seeing an unfamiliar dark pickup parked across the street around that time. Search teams worked fields and riverbanks. Flyers went up in shop windows. Local media picked up the story. The town wanted a quick explanation. A random crime, a stranger passing through. Something that didn't point back at anyone they knew. The evidence, however, refused to cooperate. Detectives built two timelines. What was known then, what would only be discovered later. From Emily's phone records, one number appeared again and again in the weeks before she vanished, often late at night. It was saved under a single letter, S. When investigators traced it, the results startled them. S was Samuel Price, a well-liked local contractor, married, 2 children, no criminal record. Recorded calls and messages showed an emotional, sometimes tense connection. Against the image Emily presented at work, this told a different story, a secret relationship she had never shared with her family. When questioned, Samuel admitted they had been seeing each other but insisted it had ended mutually and that he hadn't seen her in several days. That's where the second timeline challenged him. Location data from his phone placed him within a few blocks of Emily's apartment on the very night she disappeared. When asked why, Samuel said he drove by to see if her car was there. Not proof by itself, but enough to change the direction of the case. Meanwhile, another piece was missing. Emily's personal notebook. Coworkers described seeing her write in it during breaks, closing it quickly when others walked by. The notebook was not in her apartment, car, or locker. Investigators came to believe that understanding that notebook might mean understanding what got Emily killed, or what drove her to run. From here, detectives faced 3 realistic possibilities. Random abduction. A stranger noticed her routine and struck when she came home. It fit the town's fear but didn't match the targeted feel of her phone data. A colleague, hospitals are high-stress environments, and tensions can build. Several co-workers were quietly vetted. No one's movements matched the time window like Samuel's did. The secret relationship, Samuel's calls, his proximity to her apartment, and the abrupt ending of their relationship pushed him to the center of the investigation. But without a body, a crime scene, or the missing notebook, the case began to stall. Public attention moved on. For Emily's family, life froze at the moment she stepped out of the hospital that final night. Almost 2 years later, Willow Creek approved a small riverside park project. During excavation, workers struck metal, a rusted storage container half buried near the tree line. Inside were old tools, a tarp, and a damaged backpack. The backpack held Emily's hospital IDH, her house keys, and most importantly, her notebook. The notebook changed everything. In careful, dated entries, Emily had documented strange discrepancies in medication inventory during the hospital's recent renovation, a project led by none other than Samuel Price's construction company. She wrote about locked cabinets she'd found ajar, counts that didn't add up, and her plan to report it formally after gathering enough proof so it can't be buried. The final pages, written just days before she vanished, were short, He asked me not to say anything yet. Says it will ruin everything. I can't pretend I don't see what's happening. I need to decide who I'm going to be in this story. Forensic testing on the container and its contents found DNA from Emily and from Samuel. Confronted with the notebook, the location data, and the DNA report, Samuel's version of events began to crumble. Prosecutors argued that Emily had become a threat, not only to an affair, but to a scheme involving controlled medications and construction access. According to their case, Samuel confronted her behind the hospital the night she disappeared. What followed ended her life and led him to hide her belongings by the river, hoping the water and time would erase his involvement. In court, he ultimately entered a plea that avoided trial but accepted responsibility for Emily's death and the attempt to conceal it. He received a long prison sentence. For Willow Creek, the legal outcome brought clarity but not comfort. The story was not about a faceless stranger passing through. It was about someone trusted, standing at the intersection of money, secrecy, and fear of exposure. Emily's family chose to share parts of her notebook publicly, especially the entries where she wrestled with whether to speak up. Her sister later said, she didn't see herself as a hero. She just couldn't live with pretending nothing was wrong. Today, people in Willow Creek remember Emily Hart not only as a nurse who didn't come home, but as a woman who tried to protect her patients and her community, and paid for it with her life. And that's the unsettling thing about this case. In the official records, Emily is the victim. In her own notebook, she was also the whistleblower. Some cases stay open in the law. Others stay open in the questions they leave behind. This one does both.